Are we live with the panelists now? We are.
We are.
Okay.
All the panelists in the NDMA office, namaste, and welcome to the fourth session of this event. Looking forward to your presentations. Well, it's 12:10 and time to start. Namaskar, Jai Hind, and good afternoon. Welcome to the fourth and final session of PDNS 2021. We've had 3 fascinating sessions so far, and our eagerness to begin the fourth session actually is palpable. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to the chairperson of the fourth session. He is a self-effacing scholar general. I've been like Ekalavya, that he's been my guru, he doesn't know about it, but always learned a great deal from him. He was commissioned in 1962 and of current topical interest is, he's the one who led the first tank column in the liberation of Bangladesh war into the capital city of Dhaka. During Operation Parakram, he was the GOC-in-C of Western Command and really poised for action. But after retirement, he's been even into achievements one after the other. To begin with, principal advisor to CII, the Confederation of Indian Industry, and later its Director General. And he actually conceptualized and launched the Skill India initiative of CII. He was a member of the National Security Advisory Board and now also a member of the Tribune Trust. He was a service member of the National Task Force on Information Technology and also a member of the Group of Ministers Task Force on Review of Defense Management. Those are impeccable credentials, and I have great pleasure in handing over the session to him. We expect a lot from this session, more or less as a culminating event of this PDNS 2021. General Mehta, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinayak. Can you hear me?
Yes, strength high. Okay.
Vinayak, thank you. You always humble me, and I feel totally humbled by the introduction, but be that as it may. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to do session 4, which deals with imperatives. The word imperatives has not been explained, but by implication, what will get covered by the eminent panelists will deal with technology, where we are going, what can we predict, and how can we make sure that the entire thing gels as a team. But before that, I feel absolutely privileged to chair this panel on 2 or 3 reasons. The first is, in the panelists, we have the best in class. The best in class organization is the NDMA. The country has chosen to be apex to look after all disasters and those things linked with it. And when the country selects somebody for the apex organization, the best gets selected. And therefore, I am privileged to chair a panel with the best in class. The second, the first call of a legally constituted, democratically elected government is the security of its people and the safety of the people, the security of its country. The safety of its people is prime, and linked to that is the security of the country. And to be able to do that, there are at least 4 or 5 elephants in the room. The first elephant is internal security. Now, I don't want to go into details of that. All of us understand, whether it's a 370 being invoked, revoked, or whether it is Northeast, or whether it is any other type of trouble, internal security is a component to ensure that India remains secure. Then there is external security. Now, in external security, we know we're the elephants in the room. We have China on one side, Pakistan on the other. However, while warfare in the past have seen a kinetic dimension, today we are also witnessing a non-kinetic dimension. So when you look at both these countries, to anticipate, and we heard about that in critical infrastructure the other day, the security with a non-kinetic dimension is also something we have to be worried about, careful about, and therefore that is the external threat we talk about. The third is climate change. Whether we like it or not, that's the elephant in the room. Peninsular India, which seeds on two sea coasts on both sides, with the Himalayas right on the top, and coming as it down from the Tibetan plateau, we will have a serious impact in relation to climate change if it happens the way at the moment it is anticipated. And it is going to bother our national security. The next is disasters. Whether they are pandemics, whether they are CBRN, which was talked about the other day by the earlier panel, whatever we do, disasters is going to have a direct impact, not only on you and me, but on the planet, which also includes living organisms, which include animals on the planet. Therefore, this is an important component, and I'm glad to tell the audience that Pune International Center, with the support and assistance of Dr. Mashalkar, Vijay Kelkar, and the rest of the team, have been propagating for a long time that national security is much more than national defense. National security is national defense and more. And in the more, there are external threats, internal threats. Disasters is the new elephant that has now begun to get recognized, because like anything else, it doesn't understand caste, creed, color, sex, domicile, region, geography. And therefore, as part of PIC's program, it gives me great delight, first, to chair such eminent panelists. Second, to understand and to be able to propagate through you and the medium that national security has now acquired dimensions well beyond gun, tanks, and aircrafts that we used to think about long ago. And thirdly, and most importantly, that unless the common man becomes part of the system, no matter what we do, and therefore propagation of national security through you will be very, very important. With this, I am not going to introduce the panelists one by one, except to say that we have Shri Kamal Kishore, whose biodata will come out in his presentation. The outstanding resource in relation to what the world does, what we do, and what we are doing. We also have General Atta Hasnain, who will talk a bit about organization. He and I have been former colleagues. I know him like the back of my hand, and I think vice versa is also true. He'll talk about Himalayas and a couple of other initiatives that have been initiated by the NDMA, which will help us to understand where disaster is and where we are going in that area. We also have Rajendra Singh, former Director General of the Coast Guard. He will tell us why our coasts are safe and what needs to be done more to make it safer still. And then we have Dr. Vatsa, who will join in a little later in the panel, who will talk about policy, budgeting, mitigation, budgeting for mitigation, and things like that. At the end of these four things, whatever we needed to know, whatever was left out from the first 2 days session, I think we'll just add to give us a good sense of where we are and where we are going. With that, and no more, may I request the first speaker, Shri Kamal
Dr.
Kishore.
Mohapatra. Dr. Mohapatra is also now with us in the panel.
Oh, he's in the panel with us?
Yes, he's here, sir. He's here with us. You can see.
Doctor, welcome. I was told that you would be speaking from, you're here with us. And thank you very much. I mean, without you, no disaster can actually be remedied or taken care of, because you predict, and you predict very well, and you are the cyclone man of India. So everybody knows you for that. I don't think I have to add more to your illustrious knowledge that people have about you and what you've done in the recent past and what you will tell us today. With that, may I request Kamal to please make your presentation.
Thank you very much, General Mehta, and thank you very much to the organizers for inviting the NDMA members to this event. What I'm going to do this afternoon, this lovely early winter afternoon in Delhi, is give you a quick perspective on what is happening globally in the area of disaster risk management, India's place in the global affairs with regards to disaster risk management, India's responsibilities, expectations that the world has from India, and what we are trying to do to fulfill those expectations. So at the outset, I want to just remind ourselves that some 2,500 days ago, on 18th of March 2015, the world adopted a framework called Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction at a conference held in Sendai, same prefecture which was affected by Fukushima disaster 4 years before that. During that event, the world agreed, alongside India, there were 186 other countries, that we will measure our progress not by the number of workshops we do, the number of trainings we do, the number of equipment we buy, but specific progress we make in terms of reducing the loss of lives, reducing number of people affected by disasters, reducing number of the economic losses, and so on. So we will measure progress, but by not counting how busy we are, but what results we are achieving. And these are ambitious targets, and the world cannot succeed in achieving the targets enshrined in Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction if India does not succeed. India is one of those countries that has all manners of geophysical and hydrometeorological disasters. You know, we have earthquakes, we have tsunamis, cyclones, floods. We even have, not many people live there, but we even have a volcano. It does not affect many people, but we have all manners and we have large losses. So it is really important that India succeeds. It inspires the rest of the world, and as a result, the humanity succeeds in tackling the disaster risk. Now, why is it that the world expects such a great deal from us? I think it expects such a great deal from us because we've had some successes which we need to celebrate. The world is looking at us. The kind of reduction in losses from cyclones we've achieved in the last 15 years is something like 98%. 98% reduction in mortality from cyclones. Similar progress we've made in achieving reduction in mortality from heat waves, from thousands to, a few tens. So again, big progress. And the world is looking at us, how a country like India with such complex, multifarious challenges is able to reduce losses. And what is it that the world can learn? There are people from United States, France, who ask us, how do you manage to evacuate, 1 million people in 24 hours, reduce mortality, and then sort of de-evacuate them and send them back home? There are not many countries that can claim that. The number of people that we evacuate in cyclone situations is more than the population of so many countries. And we do that so successfully. So there is a lot that the world expects from us. Having said that, while we celebrate our success in terms of reducing mortality, we really have to do a lot better in saving livelihood, saving economic losses. I think the next frontier for us is going beyond saving lives to saving livelihoods. And when you take about saving livelihoods, you have to reduce economic losses, you have to reduce the losses that occur to infrastructure. To illustrate that with an example, 2019 cyclone Fani, mortality was in a few tens, but we lost something like $5 billion in just one event, in one location. And out of that $5 billion, we lost $1.4 billion just in power sector, And I am just counting the direct losses. The indirect losses will be enormous. So when you lose electricity, you lose telecom. When you lose telecom, the ATM machines don't work. When the ATM machines don't work, people don't have access to cash. When people don't have access to cash, small markets stop to operate. When small markets stop to operate, people don't have livelihood. So it has, the effects of damage to infrastructure really ripples across multiple sectors, and it has enormous consequences, which we are becoming quite alive to. And in light of this, a little over a year after the Sendai framework was adopted, India hosted the first ever, after the adoption of Sendai framework, Asian Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction. Our Prime Minister said that Sendai framework is fine and good. How are we going to take it down to the ground? And he laid out a fantastic 10-point agenda. I will not go through every point, but in terms of its scope and ambition, and in terms of a sense of urgency, it's quite remarkable. It hardly leaves any area untouched, from improving the use of risk maps, to improving the use of mobile technology, to increasing the participation of women, to increasing risk coverage for everyone. It covers everything. And one of the things that it looks at is, how do we make sure that each and every rupee, yen, dollar, pound sterling that the humanity invests in building infrastructure is built in a manner that it leads us to a resilient future, not a risky future. Here, I just want to highlight a few challenges. Why is it that it is important? See, unlike building a house, when you build infrastructure, you don't build it for 10 years. You don't build it for 20 years. You don't build it for your children. You build it for your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So you have to build it in a manner that it is resilient to risks that are known now, but also risks that are known in the future. So how do you deal with it? What do you plan for? If I'm building a coastal infrastructure, should I account for a 10-centimeter sea level rise or 25-centimeter sea level rise? The cost implications of both are very different. And this is a problem which is not a problem only for developing countries. It's a problem for developed countries as well. We are a country with infrastructure deficit. United States is a country which has infrastructure which is completing its life cycle. So how do we deal with uncertainty in planning for tomorrow's infrastructure? Tomorrow's infrastructure cannot be designed by yesterday's metrics. It has to be designed with future's metrics. The second thing is that the world has never been more interconnected than it is right now. The world's aviation network is only as resilient as the weakest airport in the chain. So this is the world shipping industry is only as strong as the weakest port in the global shipping chain. So this is something that cannot be done by one country alone. We really have, the interdependencies across the global system are so huge that we really need to sort of work together. So that is the second point. The third point is that the economic implications. How do you, we always say that we have to attract investment in infrastructure. There are pension funds in Canada that would want to invest in infrastructure development in developing countries. But how do they make sure that the projects that are funding are bankable projects? They are being done in a manner that it will reduce the risk of disasters or disaster-related losses in the future. So these are three big challenges: dealing with future's uncertainties, looking at the interconnected world, looking at economic implications of infrastructure failure. With that in mind, our Prime Minister proposed and launched a little over 2 years ago a global coalition on disaster resilient infrastructure. Right now, it has 27 countries as its members and 7 international organizations. And these 27 countries include more than 15 G20 countries. There are landlocked countries, there are small island countries, there are emerging economies, there are advanced economies. So a very wide variety of other things. And we are working towards making our power infrastructure resilient, making our telecom infrastructure resilient, making our digital infrastructure resilient. The world has survived the pandemic on the back of digital infrastructure, and we are taking the resilience of digital infrastructure for granted. We must not do that. We must make sure that data centers, digital networks are immune to the effects of climate change and disasters. So these are some of the things that we're working. I think I will not go into any greater detail. I will take questions when they come up. But I just want to close by saying that when India does development cooperation, it does it in a different way. It doesn't do it in a top-down way. It does it in a horizontal way. You know, we don't talk down at people. When we work with small island countries, we facilitate peer-to-peer exchange. When our teams go and respond to Fukushima-like disasters, they are welcomed because they come with a certain humility, you know, a certain human touch. When our Army Medical Corps is deployed after 2003 Bam earthquake, I was there, I was witness to it. They are the most popular medical corps because the kind of humanity they bring to it. I think there is a certain cultural ethos we have that must imbue all the work that we do in terms of international cooperation in this area. I think with that, I will stop. I just want to say that CBRI is only one example. In the last 5-6 years, we've had cooperative exercises with BIMSTEC, very innovative. BIMSTEC exercise on how do you do disaster response in a cultural heritage site. We've done it with Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We've done it with the SARC. We've done it with Indian Ocean Rim Association. And I'm sure I'm forgetting a few. So, you know, our engagement on disaster risk management has been through a multiple range of platforms. And this is really important. The world expects it of us. There is something unique we have to offer, and we really have to step up, which we are doing, and, you know, play that role that the world expects of us. Thank you very much.
Kamal, thank you very much. That is an outstanding presentation in a very brief time. And the thing that strikes me on my mind, you said digital infrastructure helped us pass the pandemic. You also mentioned cultural infrastructure that India represents to the world in relation to our societal norms and our value system. When these put together, we have to be the best in class. Kamal, thank you very much. General Hasnain.
General Mehta, sir, thank you for this invitation, all of us. And on behalf of the NDMA, it's a great pleasure that we are all together linked with you at this time. I want to reassure you and the audience that we are here fully alive to the linkage of disaster management with national security, particularly in the non-traditional dimension which you had already explained. The disaster risk challenges faced by our country are acute. We are amongst the most vulnerable countries in the world to natural disasters, losing a significant percentage of our GDP to disasters each year. This morning itself, I was trying to research and I found that our losses in 2020 amounted to something to the tune of $87 billion, not completely confirmed. Japan was $88 billion and China was way above. And to this is increasing each year. There is a discernible increase in frequency and severity of natural disasters in the country. Some of the drivers of this are increasing density of urban population, unplanned development and effects of climate change. And with the Honorable Prime Minister leaving for Glasgow in the next 2 days, I think this is the time to discuss India's role in climate change. We could not have been discussing this at a more appropriate moment. With the promulgation of the Disaster Management Act in 2005, of which you have already heard a lot yesterday, India saw the dawn of a new era of comprehensive disaster risk management. Disaster management activities that were limited to response in the earlier years and relief then expanded to include prevention, mitigation, preparedness, recovery, and reconstruction. The Act also led to the creation of a new institutional structure for disaster management, with the setting up of the National Disaster Management Authority, or the NDMA, State Disaster Management Authorities, or the SDMA, the NDRF, or the National Disaster Response Force, and the National Institute of Disaster Management, or the NIDM. Now, we are aware that the Cabinet Committee on Security, and this is the organizational part which I'm just speaking for the next minute or so, we are aware that the Cabinet Committee on Security and the National Crisis Management Committee are the top-level decision-making bodies in the country for any disaster or crisis. NDMA is the apex authority providing strategic leadership to the country in disaster risk management. It lays down policies, plans, and guidelines, as also coordinates their enforcement and implementation. It is also vested with the responsibility for superintendence of the NDRF and laying down broad policies and guidelines for functioning of the NIDM. Response, I dare say, remains the responsibility of the disaster management wing of the Ministry of Home Affairs. NDRF is the largest dedicated response force in the world. It presently has 12 battalions strategically deployed across the country to provide specialist response in the wake of disasters. 4 additional battalions are under raising at the moment. So sanctioned in 2018, and these are at the final stages of it. In addition to the battalion headquarters, there are 28 regional response centers in the country to speed up response. NDRF is a 100% deputationist force which draws manpower from the Central Armed Police Force, very much like the Rashtra Rifles of the Indian Army, which is there for CI operations. NDRF have been trained and equipped for diverse disasters, including CBRN emergencies, which I know is a matter of great concern at the moment. But I can assure you, can assure the audience that this is one dimension, one domain, which is receiving a tremendous amount of focus of the NDMA at the moment. It assists the civil administration in distribution of relief material and coordination with various agencies. In peacetime, the NDRF carries out capacity building of communities and the training of Central Armed Police Forces and the SDRFs of the different states. It's a very important part that the specialist capability of the NDRF is brought to bear across the country along with the SDRFs. It needs to be understood that due to the geographical expanse of India and its huge population, no central force would suffice response needs. The need for each state and the union territory to have its own captive response force cannot be wished for. Now, as of date, the SDRFs, 29 states out of the 36 states and union territories, 29 of them have raised their own SDRFs. However, these are very substantially in terms of their strength. They vary in terms of their strength, organization, training, and equipment. In the past, a highly responsive NDRF, which has gained tremendous proficiency, has acted actually in many ways as a disincentive for states to raise their own capacity in response. Unfortunately, there are still 7 or 8 states which have not even raised their SDR. But of late, states seem to have realized that a well-equipped and well-trained SDRF will be of a great force multiplier against the onslaught of disaster. Let me speak a little bit on the Himalayan region, which I look after at the NDMA. This is a fragile region, as you're aware, and an area where the government is paying much attention at this moment. This year in particular, you have seen a maze of disasters taking place in the Himalayan region. They seem to be eternal, that's what we perceive them to be, but it is one of the most fragile ecosystems on Earth. Steep slopes, poor soil and heavy monsoon rains make its mountains highly vulnerable to erosion. Deforestation is accelerating this process. Increased industrial and commercial activities leading to further destabilization of the soil. In recent years, abnormal retreat of the glaciers has been observed along with increased frequency of cloudbursts and flash floods. Glacial lake outburst floods, or GLOF as it's called, and landslide hazard has increased manifold in the Himalayan. Today, in fact, I was surprised when I started the research earlier that there are 9,575 glaciers, approximately 37,500 square kilometers of glaciated zones in the Indian Himalayan region, spread across 6 states and union territories. There's Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, and Arunachal Pradesh. These glaciers form the perennial source for 3 great river systems: the Indus, the Ganga, and the Brahmaputra. The glaciated areas of only these 3 river basins contain about 972 supraglacial lakes and 889 moraine dam glacial lakes, apart from the other river basins. The Ministry of Jal Shakti is the nodal ministry for this, for GLOF. It is monitoring glacial lake and water bodies more than 50 hectares and beyond 50 hectares. Glacial lakes of lesser area also pose a serious threat, just like it happened with the Chorabari Lake in the Kedarnath area, if you remember, in 2013. The recent Chamoli disaster And the current situation of floods and landslides in Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh are stark reminders of our vulnerability. I personally, along with Mr. Rajendra Singh, had visited Joshimath to investigate the Chamoli disaster, and a full report on this was submitted to the Ministry of Home Affairs. These incidents raise questions about the threat to the Himalayan ecology by the geotectonic processes, global warming, and need of clean energy. The need for sustainable and disaster-resilient infrastructure development in the mountains cannot be overemphasized, and you already heard a lot on this from Mr. Kamal Kishore just now. There's also a need to enhance our monitoring network in the region to enable timely early warning of impending disasters. Technologies for these, unfortunately, are yet under development. But equally important is the timely dissemination of early warning. For example, 200 lives could have been actually saved if the workforce at the Tapo 1 hydroelectric project were not present in the race tunnel at that particular time. There was a possibility of approximately a 20 to 25 minute warning, which could have been given in case we had even visual surveillance over that area and a capability of passage of that information. Directions have now, of course, been issued to set up upstream visual observation and satellite communication to command centers at various projects. And this is something which is under tremendous development. A word on forest fires. Forest Survey of India has reported that 54.4% of forests in India are exposed to occasional fires, 7.49% to moderately frequent fires, and about 2.5% to high incidence levels, while 35% of India's forests have not been exposed to fire at all. Major affected areas lie in the Northeast India. We've had some problems in Nagaland and Manipur, particularly this year. And in the forests on the Deccan Plateau, of course, not to forget Uttarakhand as an area. Even Uttar Pradesh this year has had its own share of forest fires. Prolonged droughts make forests vulnerable to fires, and the changing climate is further aggravating their vulnerability. The fragmentation of most of Indian forests and high human presence in most of these forested areas adds to their vulnerability. Most forest fires are man-made and are linked to socio-economic and livelihood issues. Hence, it is possible to greatly reduce these incidents by making communities aware of the long-term effects. And this is where our focus always of the NDMA, community awareness. Somehow or the other, our IEC activities have to reach out to the communities at large. Resilience of forests to fires may also be increased through moisture and water conservation, as well as management of the forest floor biomass. There's also a need for improving the forest fire detection and alert capabilities. There is a need for dedicated firefighting teams under the state forest departments. Currently, I am heading a study which has been ordered on the response to forest fires. It is unclear. This is an area of responsibility which remains unclear in India. People are expecting the NDRF to be able to respond and be present to fight forest fires. And forest fires can rage for 2 months and more in certain cases. In the case of the United States, for example, most of the issues of forest fires or bush fires are outsourced. You have agencies which are actually being hired to fight these fires. In my last bit of this intervention, let me just speak a little bit on two very important projects that the NDMA is at the moment pursuing, primarily in terms of early warning and not so much early warning, but more of dissemination of information. The first is called Project Sachet, or the Common Alerting Protocol. A pilot project of this in Tamil Nadu was utilized during the first part of the pandemic last year to actually send out messages of IEC activities to create a greater awareness. And this has encouraged us tremendously to take up this whole project as a part of the early warning and dissemination system. The overall capabilities in disaster early warning and extreme weather forecast have improved vastly in the recent years. To derive maximum benefit of this is a need for speedy dissemination of alerts generated by early warning agencies to maximum persons. For example, Dr. Mohapatra's early warning, his information which he generates. It is very good to generate that information, but if that information does not reach the concerned people, it is of no value. So we need to have a system by which we ensure that the information generated by him must reach in a mass communication way, reach the people. With this in mind, NDMA has launched a state-of-the-art common alerting protocol-based integrated alert system called Sachet. This project envisages the dissemination of alerts and early warning to people in affected areas of the country by SDMAs using diverse media like SMS, mass SMS or burst SMS, cell broadcast, radio, television, internet, and the project phase 1 will be completed in the next 18 months. We also have an emergency response support system or the ERSS. The country has a uniform number 112 and a mobile application for fire, medical, police, women's safety, and child protection. NDMA has commenced work on the project of extension of emergency response support system or this dial 112 now to also disaster emergencies. The project has been taken up through the CDAC under the newly constituted preparedness and capacity building funding window of the NDRF at the cost of about 41 crore rupees. All states and UTs, union territories, have been taken on board for this project, and 25 states have already signed the memorandum of understanding with us. This project will ensure that any person in India would be able to seek help during any life-threatening emergency. In addition, it is also being ensured that all SDMAs in this country have the same helpline number, 1070 across the country. So you may be at any part of the country, you may belong to any other part of the country. The moment you dial 1070, you will access the SDMA area, the SDMA of that particular state where you are at that particular moment. So lastly, under the Prime Minister's 10-point program, much emphasis has been laid on technologies, harnessing social media for disaster response and disaster education, which is, I think, one of the most important aspects. And also extending disaster management as a subject to various universities and training establishments. This will become increasingly more important in the coming years. I do believe that the Prime Minister's 10-point program is one of the best documents in terms of guidance and approach to disaster management in India. With that, thank you very much and Jai.
Thank you, Atta. Thank you very much. Very exhaustive, very informative. A lot being done centrally. My question to you later would be, how is it being disseminated to the states, and how are the states and districts picking up what you're passing down to them? But that's a question for a later thing, because at the end of the day, the delivery is more important, not more important, as important as the articulation from the center. But thank you very much, Atta, for a very exhaustive presentation. We'll come back to you with questions a little later. May I now request Shri Rajendra Singh to please give us a good idea about our coastlines. Rajendra.
Thank you very much, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. It is indeed a privilege to be amidst you and apprise you all on the relevant subject, that is capacity building and community living. Without going too much into the background, let me straightway highlight the initiative undertaken by NDMA in the recent years. In the background of Sendai framework, disaster management witnessing a turning point and vision of Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, there is a paradigm shift in approach from response, relief to prevention, mitigation, and preparedness. This shift was ushered through engagement of Disaster Management Act 2005, Disaster Management Policy 2009, Prime Minister Agenda Point 2016, and National Disaster Management Act Plan in 2019, and 34 guidelines based on specific disasters and themes have been prepared and shared with all stakeholders. Additionally, the more focus was on strengthening of the State Disaster Management Authority and District Disaster Management Authority. Implementation of Sendai Framework for Disaster Reduction are at the various phases of implementation, and my favorite motto from Sendai Framework goes, leave no one behind. Means we have to ensure no vulnerable people are left behind in disaster-prone areas. For this, an effective disaster management requires the involvement of a multitude of diverse actors from inside and outside of government mechanism and strong participation of local communities, as they are the first victim and same time they are the first responder. Understanding the volunteers from within the communities are the first line of response. The Government of India stresses the importance of preparing local people and enhance their capacity and develop their capacity, a culture of capacity building, so that the culture of awareness, culture of preparedness, culture of sharing information can be developed within the community. This includes mock drill, periodical drills that community participate in advance for disaster. And the main theme here was to how to integrate with the community. Now community, so much of interaction is going on from the Coast Guard side, from the Army side, from the state side, from the police side, from SDMA, DDMA. We are regular community interaction program is going on. Now we are working on how to integrate communities into a main theme. Towards the same, the significant step is a scheme named Abda Mitra is being implemented by NDMA since May 2016, with a focus on training of 6,000 community volunteers, 200 per district in 30 districts in 25 states for flood-prone areas. Based on the positive feedback and strong recommendation of states and UTs for training of more volunteers in the hazards-prone districts of India, and we have NDMA is also planning to upscale the scheme in Pan-India to train 1 lakh volunteers in 350 districts. And now is a multitude of hazards. It is cyclone, landslide, earthquake, and flood. And so that the build up local capacity, as it was the one of the agenda in Prime Minister's 10-point agenda. This would be a great help for the community and will also promote a culture of volunteerism in DRR in India. As General Mehta has said, the coast is secure. The total of India 7,500 kilometer coastline, 5,700 kilometers are highly vulnerable to tropical cyclone. The coastal area in India has been witnessing the wars of cyclone at frequent intervals. To reduce the loss of life and properties in the event of future calamities, the National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Project, so-called NCRMP, has been launched by the Ministry of Home Affairs with the support from World Bank, and NDMA is the implementing authority. The overall objective of the project is to undertake suitable structural and non-structural measures to mitigate the effect of cyclone in the coastal area. The project has identified 8 cyclonic-prone states with varying level of vulnerability. These states have been further classified into 2 categories based on the frequency of occurrence of cyclone, size of population, and existing institutional mechanism for the disaster management. Under the NCRMP Phase 1, which was launched in 2011, 535 multi-purpose cyclone shelter has been built up. 1,086 kilometer road has been built, 32 bridges have been built, and 82 kilometer saline embankment have been completed. And in this, like General Mehta has said, how the dissemination of this information goes to community. For this, the EWDS early warning dissemination system. 275 number of alert siren has already been completed in Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. 476 number of digital mobile radio and 34 satellite terminal has already been procured and installed in Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. And that's why when we are talking about Andhra and Odisha, if you see into 1999 in Odisha, Paradip, almost 11,000 people have lost their lives. But if you talk about now, Yas, Nisarg, and Amphan, the mortality rate was only in tens and not even in hundreds. Because the 16 lakh people was shifted during Amphan time in the 3 states in Odisha, Andhra, and West Bengal. 16 lakh people were shifted within 24 hours from and their villages and taken to the safe places. As far as the NCRMP Project 2, it comprises 6 states from Gujarat, Goa, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala, and 1 state in East Coast, that is West Bengal. 292 number of multipurpose cyclone shelter is under construction and will be completing in March 2022. 1,514 kilometer underground cabling is in progress and will be completed in March. Roads has been built and other shelter and other saline embankment is also being completed. In addition, NDMA is providing financial and human resource support to each of the 115 districts in the country to strengthen their disaster risk management, the disaster risk reduction program as per the standard framework. 115 districts has been identified by the NITI Aayog and NDMA is giving full support to them. On top of this, 1,336 capacity building training program has been launched with 5 priority sectors like education, health, Panchayati Raj institution, urban local body, and rural development, and shuttle labor training under specific sectors like first aid, search and rescue, management, early warning system, and communication have been implemented for 36,987 officials and community members. That is, at Panchayati level, has been trained and they have been imparted with the training. So many other things to develop the community culture, to develop to how to community to be brought into a mainstream. There are so many other programs is also undertaken by NDMA. Now, lastly, like General Mehta sir has said, that security for the country and safety for the people. Here I would like to mention the famous military strategist from China, Sun Tzu. He said, quickness is the essence of war. It is for the security of the country, but here, as far as the disaster goes, I'll say preparedness is the essence of this war. If we are well prepared, then we can save ourselves. Lastly, I want to say the disaster management system of our country has significantly improved. However, there's a lot of scope for further improvement and synergizing efforts. We have to work towards Prime Minister's famous quote that no one is safe until everyone is safe. We are working, NDMA is working towards that, and will make sure in another coming years that mortality rate will be. We are trying to work towards to bring it down to 0 level. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for hearing and giving patience.
Thank you, Rajendra. Thank you again. Very exhaustive, very detailed, very informative, very comprehensive. Thank you very much. A question that will remain to be asked of you, which will come to the question answer session when we get there is, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. The question that will be asked of you is that in the figure that you gave out, it would be good to get a sample of what the state has done as a result of what you people have directed. But that we can talk of a little later. Any state of your choice, where you think things are happening better than they're happening in the rest, in the coastal regions, and we have so many coastal states. But thank you very much once again for a very good, informative presentation. May I now request Dr. Krishna Vatsa to please speak to us on his subject of policy and what we are doing. Dr. Vatsa.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, General Mehta. Thanks very much, General Hasnain, for inviting us to this very, very important deliberation. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here and to speak to all the distinguished participants and panelists. It's really a very, I think, thought-provoking session when we get to reflect upon the disaster management system of the country. I propose to speak on the evolution of disaster management system in India, and as this system reflects the strength of nation's economy and governance. Disaster management is not a standalone system. It is very much a mirror image of how the country is governed, how the country is looked after and cared for. So I will make this presentation by advancing 4 key propositions right in the beginning. And these are very important as I outline the development of India's disaster management system, and its also its reflection in the emergence of India as a regional and global power. The first key proposition is that disasters reflect upon the state of nation. No, disasters are not just physical events. Disasters bring out the political dysfunction, social fault lines, and they also are a serious comment on the state of governance. If you look at all the major disasters of the world, Tangshan earthquake of China, Chernobyl, nuclear explosion of Russia, Odisha super cyclone in India, Hurricane Katrina, Tohoku earthquake in Japan. These are very large scale earthquakes, but they were essentially a comment on the state of the nation. And I will not like to explain all the 5 here, but just the first one, Tangshan earthquake. Tangshan earthquake actually brought down the communism as practiced by Mao's leadership. It was also a time when the Mao was dying, Gang of 4 was vying for power in Beijing. Deng Xiaoping was coming up. Tangshan earthquake really, hastened the decline of Maoist communism. So it was a watershed moment in the history of China. And same thing could be said about Chernobyl. It brought out the collapse of Soviet Russia. And Gorbachev himself is on record saying that Chernobyl really was responsible for collapse of Soviet Russia. I just want to speak about Odisha super cyclone. The Congress never came to power after that, in Odisha. It's Patnaik and his son who have been ruling Odisha. So these are not ordinary events. These are events with huge, huge ramifications. The second key proposition is that mortality is the key indicator of the severity of disaster. And mortality is very, very important to understand. A nation is always judged by how much resources it can expend on saving lives. That's the distinction between a caring and uncaring nation. That's how a country is judged internationally. And when you have a very high level of mortality, it speaks very poorly of the country. The third proposition is that disaster management is an outcome of policy, programs, systems, and investments. It's a very composite system. It's a complex system. And when the governments make systematic investments in disaster management, they really bring up the system. So governments need to invest systematically, continuously, and they need to update disaster management system on a regular basis. The fourth proposition is also very, very important, that disaster management is not just about response, relief, and rescue. It's not just about saving lives, and this is a very popular misconception, at least in security establishment. Disaster management is equally about early warning, preparedness, prevention, recovery and reconstruction, mitigation. So it's a huge, huge area, and there is a need for balance of investment, balance of upgradation across all the areas. So these are the four key propositions before I bring up the discussion of the evolution of disaster management system in India. And then you can see how India's emergence as a power is very much related to how disaster management has grown in the country. India's disaster management system has its origins in agrarian crises. As you know, our disaster management was actually centered in Ministry of Agriculture. And it originated with the permanent settlement that Warren Hastings brought about in 1793. What permanent settlement did was that it brought a recurrent cycle of droughts and famines in the country in 19th century. And as a nation, we became weaker and weaker. Our life expectancy declined. Throughout the 19th century, our life expectancy was just about 25. And so if you can see how we became weak as a country just because of the recurrent famines. Famine Code of 1883 was the first disaster management document that was written. And it was all about the survival, how the people should survive. So this is how the country's disaster management system grew, and it continued to grow almost till 1965. It was all about relief. It was all about dealing with the food shortages, and country continued to import food grains. What really made the big difference in disaster management system was the Green Revolution, 1965, 1966. And Green Revolution actually brought an end to this cycle of droughts and famines to a great extent. At least, we had droughts since then, but our droughts did not convert themselves into famines. And that really brought some amount of food surplus to the country, and country started growing. Country started growing in multiple ways. Our life expectancy also increased considerably. And I would say that it also added much power to the country. If we could fight our war with Pakistan decisively in 1971, and we could feed large number of Bangladeshi refugees and the prisoners of war that came from Bangladesh, the Green Revolution was very much responsible for that. Without the Green Revolution, that would not have been possible. So full credit to General Maneksa and his warrior colleagues, but the agrarian revolution that happened really lent a strength to India's power. And that really brought a decisive change in the way disaster management system was practiced in India. So, and there is a book on that, Green Revolution, Geopolitics and the Green Revolution. So that's very, very important to understand how Green Revolution brought a decisive change, a decisive shift in India's leverage all over the world. But I would say that 17 and 18, we still have relief-centric disaster management. We still were dealing with droughts. We were providing assistance for agricultural inputs. We were implementing large-scale public works program. We laid the foundation for public distribution system. We also had many drought area development programs, desert development programs. So it was still largely agricultural. 1990s, we brought another shift. 1990s was a decade of liberalization, a very accelerated economic growth, and it also brought a greater risk exposure. This was also the time when we had several large-scale disasters causing huge mortality. Latur earthquake, 1993, 8,000 people. Kandla cyclone, 1998, again, thousands of people. Odisha super cyclone, Bhuj earthquake, Indian Ocean tsunami, all of them caused large-scale deaths. And really it brought out that if you want to grow economically, if you want to be really a regional and world power, then you need to upgrade your disaster management system. And as a result, we saw several changes from 2005 onwards. We enacted the Disaster Management Act in 2005. We set up the NDMA, SDMAs. Through this act, we set up the National Institute of Disaster Management and a State Institute of Disaster Management. We invested considerably in early warning systems. We set up NDRF, SDRF, and we set up also a large network of POCs across the country. So the investments really brought about a decline in mortality across the states. So this was definitely a watermark, how 2005 Disaster Management Act brought several changes and upgraded our disaster management system. And it really also enhanced India's standing. The world over, India also became a provider of international disaster assistance to the rest of the world. I remember Mr. Kamal, Kishore, and I were in the same hall when reconstruction conference was organized. Donors conference was organized after Nepal earthquake. Sushma Swaraj was the foreign minister, and India was the largest donor, $1 billion assistance. It was a proud moment, that, and after India, it was China's turn, and China made an announcement of $600 million. So there was clearly, India clearly had an edge. So all the investments definitely lent India a very significant edge. Now we are entering the new phase and a new era. And this is the era when we are looking at new risks, where we are seeing the impacts of climate change, where we have seen the pandemic and its ravaging impact across the world. We have also seen how the disasters are becoming more diverse, more recurrent, more frequent, smaller disasters, but they are very, very crippling. Urban floods all across the country, cloudburst and flash floods, forest fires, cyclones in the Arabian Sea. We didn't know about that earlier. Lightning incidents increasing continuously. So we would see a diversity of risks emerging. And we need new paradigms, new capacities, new resources to deal with this. And we also see our economic losses are increasing. Infrastructure, housing, business sectors, they are getting hit. So definitely we are in a different cycle. So what we need at this stage is that disaster is another upgrade of our disaster management system. As we are seeking to become an international power, we need, just now the Finance Commission has recommended diversified funding windows. We need to have more capacities, more resources at the district level, at the local level. We need to improve our early warning systems at the local level, more disaggregated early warning. We need to have greater investment in prevention and mitigation. And we need to have a national cadre of trained DM professionals. So, and disaster management as a discipline needs to expand itself and connect with climate change adaptation, social protection, livelihoods. And this all should become part of India's projection as a soft power. If we start including disaster management along with all those elements which I mentioned, I think we can be very, very successful in influencing many countries which we are dealing with. So I think this is where we are, and I would be happy to discuss it further. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very, very informative, very useful, Very incisive, very brief, but very good. Thank you so much. And we'll come back to you with questions later on. May I now request Dr. Mohapatra to give us a brief on work in IMD and some great work. Cyclone Man of India, Dr. Mohapatra.
You are
You're
mute.
muted.
You're mute.
Okay. So good afternoon, Lieutenant General Mehta Sahab and distinguished panelists and guests participating in this dialogue on national security. I am really grateful to the International Pune Center and all the experts here for giving an opportunity to speak about the subject. As all of us know that the disaster management has got various aspects, and the first and foremost aspect starts with the early warning. And India Meteorology Department acts as a nodal agency to provide early warning for various types of weather and climate related disasters, not only in the country, but also in this region of South Asia, Middle East, and Southeast Asia. So I'll just share a PowerPoint, so please excuse me just for a minute.
Dr. Mohapatra, while this is coming up, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm able to hear you. Yeah, are you able to view the PowerPoint? Okay. Can you proceed?
Yeah, please. Dr. Mohapatra, what I was going to request is your presentation, if it could be within 10 minutes, otherwise I will get a cyclone of queries.
That's fine. Yeah.
Over to the cyclone man.
Yes. Okay. So I just for refreshing our mind, I'm just telling that India is prone to various types of disasters. We have the major disasters, earthquake, then cyclones, the floods and droughts. In addition to that, also we get other small-scale disasters like thunderstorms, lightning, tornadoes, hailstorms, which also occurs nowadays quite a good number of people. While the number of deaths due to cyclones have reduced to less than 100 due to any cyclone in recent years, the number of deaths due to lightning has increased, and it is about 2,500 to 3,000 every year. So therefore, the phenomena which was not so much disastrous has become disastrous in recent years. If you just look at the early warning efficiency in recent years, what you find that this is just a slide about the forecasting and warning early warning scale of tropical cyclones. You will find that India is second to none in respect to the tropical cyclone early warning. At present, we provide early warning 5 days in advance, and recent 5 years, like 2016 to 20, if you compare with 11 to 15, you will find that there is a significant improvement even in the recent 5 years. Almost 40 to 50% improvement in track forecast error, intensity forecast error, and the landfall point forecast error. On the left-hand side bottom, you can find the picture. This is for super cyclone Amphan, 5 days ahead. Just on the beginning of the super cyclone genesis stage, this forecast was issued. So the black line indicates the actual track of the cyclone, and red line was the forecast track 5 days ahead. So what you find actually, the country has come far ahead with respect to monitoring, prediction, and early warning of the tropical cyclones, giving sufficient time to disaster managers to take all preparatory measures and also the mitigations. Now, if I just look at the heavy rainfall, which are basic reason for the flooding in the country, in the monsoon season especially, there also you find that on the left-hand side is the probability of detection of the floods in heavy rainfall in the country. What you find actually, you have the stiff rise in the prediction of the heavy rainfall. And these are the various technical scores I will not discuss. And according to the missing rate of the heavy rainfall is decreased, and false alarm is also decreased. But still we have got about 20% false alarm sometimes. And the missing is also about 20%. That means we have now accuracy of about 80% in detecting the heavy rainfall at the states and district level. And if I compare it with respect to last 5 years, what you find that the accuracy has increased by about, again, 40 to 50%. Not only that, the lead period which was available to the disaster managers earlier, and now it is being available, we'll find there is a increase in 4 days lead period. The forecast accuracy of 24 hours, which was there 5 years before, now it is the forecast accuracy of 5 days. So that by that way, we get lead period of extra 4 days. Similarly, with respect to thunderstorm, also you will find that for thunderstorm being a small phenomena, we provide the forecast in 2 categories, like 3 hours and next 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. Here also you will find that there is a significant improvement in thunderstorms, and which has enabled us to provide station-specific thunderstorm warning and lightning warning. And current accuracy level is about 88% for 3-hour forecast. Similarly, if you just look at heat wave, which Kamal Kishore Saab has discussed, you will find that here also the accuracy has improved so much that almost about 90% accuracy up to 72 hours in predicting the occurrence of heat wave. Now, as a result, what you see actually, of course, other panelists have shown and discussed this point, that number of deaths due to cyclones have reduced in recent years. You find that the recent cyclone Gulab also, there's been 18 deaths only. Cyclone, yes, only 6 deaths. And similarly, if you just look at other countries, apart from India, this is the global welfare, what India does for other countries, there also you find that there has been no cyclone in recent years where the number of deaths has also increased more than 100. So what is the outcome then? So outcome is that minimization of loss of lives because of the increase in confidence of disaster managers. And also we have been able to decrease the area of evacuation along the coast almost by 300 kilometers or by 60%. As a result, we have saved the economy. The ex gratia payment to the survivors also have reduced by about 99% due to decrease in deaths by 98%. A significant gain in various sectors like power sectors. Of course, we have to go a long way, as Kamal was telling, but still power sector has gained almost about 500 crores because of any cyclone. If you just look at power sector in ex gratia and the area of evacuation, you will find that almost 1100 crores are saved due to one cyclone. And if you look at what is the expenditure towards the modernization program of IMD, it was 437 crores. That means we have gained more than double whatever we invested during 2008 to 12 due to only one cyclone. And every year we get about 2 to 3 cyclones crossing the coast. And therefore you can just imagine how much is the gain in the sector. So these are some of the appreciations that we have received worldwide, including United Nations. Similarly, about heat action plan, if you just look at only 4 deaths in last 2020 compared to 2040 deaths in 2015. And it is possible because of the collaboration of various agencies, especially with the initiative of National Disaster Management. So you may ask, how did it happen actually? It happened because of many initiatives taken up by the national and state agencies, including policy and planning, introduction of new tools and technology, introduction of new methodology, and of course, the capacity building and confidence building measures and outreach programs. So I'll just tell what happened actually about the policy and planning. If you just look at, there has been the target of 2010, we developed some kind of vision statement for 2020 that will improve the forecast by about 40%. But you will see that it is already exceeded that 40%, and almost it is zero error in tropical cyclones. Similarly, there has been a lot of initiatives for DM Act, DM plans, cyclone mitigation project, hazard and vulnerability analysis, and institutional mechanism. And totally, if I just look at, it is only technology driven. The observations has been augmented with the help of satellite and radars, along with the sensors from surface and upper air. Also, we have come up with about 7 numerical weather prediction models in the country with the help of the high power computing system. All these models are run twice a day to provide forecast for next 10 days. We have also the extended range forecast to provide forecast for next 2 weeks. And all these things have been utilized to provide the forecast. And this forecast is now impact based. That means we are mentioning what the weather will be tomorrow and also what the weather will do tomorrow. That is the impact in terms of inundation, in terms of the damage to structures, in terms of damage to agriculture, in terms of damage to urban areas like transport, etc. So what I want to say that the recent development, what we found that it has been possible because of the introduction of new technology with respect to observations, with respect to monitoring, with respect to analysis. We have a digitization support system, and also with respect to modeling, and also early warning disseminations. You'll be happy to know that we started with only 4 Doppler radars in 2004. Now we have got 30 Doppler radars in the country, as shown in the right-hand side mark. Similarly, methodology. So we started with only up to 75 kilometers from the coast, fishermen warning for the entire country, but now we provide fishermen warning for the entire Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea and North Indian Ocean. So by that way, you will find that the methodology, depiction of the forecast, dissemination of early warning, has undergone a sea change, a paradigm shift, which has enabled the disaster managers and general public to understand clearly and take actions. So this is, for example, the technology is being used for cyclone monitoring forecasting, and we have got the SOP. At least 72 hours in advance, we are providing pre-cyclone watch, then cyclone alert, then cyclone warning. But 15 days extended forecast is being provided. Unlike many countries, I will say India is the first country which is providing a pre-genesis forecast. That means before the development of a tropical cyclone or depression, we are providing a forecast for depression and tropical cyclones. This is a new initiative which is being taken up with only the help of technology. So this impact-based forecast I was talking about, when I go for providing the impact-based forecast, the information required is the information about the socioeconomic conditions, information about the geospatial information, the digital elevation, digital surface modeling, all these things. All these technology are available in the country at present. And we have come up with a dynamic wave DCRA, that is the digital support system for cyclone management, which is based on all these informations. And we are planning now to utilize for heat wave, for thunderstorms and other severe events. These two waves, what you find, the green wave and yellow waves. So green wave is the weather information, yellow wave is the information about the socioeconomic factors, about the geospatial information. These waves have to plug together and become a rectangle. Then only the impact forecast will be 100% accurate. So this is just an example of how the impact forecast is helping the people. The district level and station level impact forecast is being provided not only for cyclone, but also for heavy rainfall, thunderstorm, heat wave, etc. In 4 stages, we are issuing the heavy rainfall warning. And that is why, with a quite good lead period, this impact forecast has helped to manage the city-specific and district-specific heavy rainfall, minimizing the loss of lives at least. And this is the new initiative which we have taken again and for flash flood guidance, which occurs usually in the hill areas, including West Coast and also the foothills of the Himalayas. Also, we come up with the urban forwarding system for cities like Mumbai and Chennai. Now it's Kolkata and Delhi. We also have a riverine flooding system in very good collaboration with Flood Forecasting Division of Central Weather Commission. All the river catchments of 153 are being provided a quantitative prediction forecast to have the assessment of the flood depth and hence the inundation, and hence according take action to mitigation. Similarly, for thunderstorm, you will be happy to know that India is one of the 5 countries in the world which is providing lightning early warning. It started 2 years back. We are providing at present district level and station specific lightning early warning with help of the satellite, with help of the radar, and also with help of the lightning detection system established by Indian Air Force and Ministry of Earth Sciences. We have accordingly the textual and graphical representation of GIS-based nowcasting of lightning. Similarly, if you come to heat wave, IMD has gone totally into the web GIS format. You can find out all severe weather information in the GIS format. This is just an example. How we managed heat wave from 2015, 20, 40 days were there. So from 2015 onwards, we started the seasonal forecast of temperature. Then you went for district forecast. Heat action plan was established in the country, which enabled to manage the heat wave along with the NGOs and city municipal corporations. Now, I'm confident. So warning dissemination, this is also very important, which was highlighted by previous speakers, is a challenge to meet out the last mile. And in the recent years, we have gone for redundancy. All types of warning dissemination, conventional and unconventional, and latest tools and technology, including space-based communication like GAMS and NAVIC are being utilized. Social media has become very handy in recent time. We are having the social media handles like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, we have got the blog page, YouTube channels, and we are utilizing all these in the local language and also English and Hindi to cater to the requirements of the general public. So I will conclude here to say that technology played a key role in the recent improvement in early warning and hence the disaster mitigation. But still there is scope to improve further with the new technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, digital forecasting, and dynamic impact-based forecasting I was discussing, and further the last mile connectivity. All these will lead further to minimize the risk due to disasters. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. There is a very good reason why you're called the Cyclone Man of India. Thank you very much. Saved so many lives. Now I put together a couple of questions, and please feel free anyone who wishes to address that. First to you, Dr. Mohapatra. When will a farmer get a message in his mobile that it is going to rain tomorrow, so don't water your field today?
So at present, we are providing the information for the farmers twice a week.
No,
through
twice a week
mobile.
is too late. I would have already watered my farm last night.
Yeah,
When will I told you to stop? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. So at present, we are providing twice a week the information valid for next 5 days to the farmers, number one. Then every 3 hours, whenever we expect there is severe weather is expected, that information is also going to the farmers. But we are not able to cover all the farmers. At present, 43 million farmers are covered to get this information. The target is to cover the entire farmers. And it is a public-private partnership. IMD, Indian Council of Agricultural Research, and all the state and central authorities are working together. The objective is to do it. But in addition to that, we have taken up some new initiatives in the recent 2 to 3 years. That is, we have formed the WhatsApp group and social media group with the active farmers in the country. Each and at least one villager should be connected, and for which every day we are issuing our severe weather warning and also the 3-hourly nowcast of severe weather warning.
Thank you, Doctor. And just one more question before we get on to the other speakers. When are we going to get to the mesoscale of prediction?
Already we have got mesoscale predictions. We have got the numerical models of 2-kilometer resolution to detect the thunderstorms and associated squalls and heavy rainfall events. And that is called as rapid refresh system. It is run every day, every hour model is being run for the entire country, information is being provided. And this provides forecast up to next 12 hours. Another mesoscale model we have got for 3-kilometer resolution, that provides forecast up to 3 days. So we have got 2 versions now to provide the mesoscale forecast of the heavy rainfall and thunderstorms.
But is it also happening in the Himalayan region?
Yes, this is covering entire country, wherever we have. But still, the problem is that the Himalayan region is data sparse. We do not have sufficient ground truth to validate the models. For this purpose, we are augmenting the observational network in the Himalayan region by augmenting the radar network. Already 11 radars is going to establish, 5 will be established, another 5 will be established there. Also for Northeast, 8 Doppler radars are coming up. Accordingly, automated weather stations and rain gauges also are being augmented. And that will fill the gap of the ground truth. And that ground truth will help further to improve the numerical modeling.
Thank you very much for your answer. And that's very satisfying. Atta, I have a question for you.
Yes,
when
sir.
are we going to harness trained manpower at the district level? A soldier, when he retires, is required to give 4 years color service if called. Why can't some of them register at the district level and be available instead of getting from Delhi flying to Calcutta, Calcutta flying to Chennai?
Oh, very good question, no doubt, sir. And as I mentioned, I think in my intervention itself, there is a tendency for over-dependence on the NDRF, the specialization of the NDRF, because of which many states have somehow relegated the importance of the SDRF as such. And at the district level, it is primarily volunteer-based. We are looking at what Mr. Rajendra was speaking about, which is essentially a volunteer-based system, which is augmented by the SDRF and further augmented by the NDRF. Now, I am fully with you that to have a trained manpower in terms of ex-servicemen available down below, it's a question of
no, there is a case of looking at this. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I as an ex-serviceman can go to a district and register myself because for 4 years I have a liability. So
absolutely, I entirely agree with you. At the DDMA level, there is a need for dedicated forces, especially in those areas which are very high disaster risk.
Right.
And out of 750, I dare say at least 150 to 200 will be such.
Yeah.
There, yes, this improvement can definitely take place. It's a question of budgeting also.
Yeah,
because
true.
most places this budgeting problem will always arise.
I understand that. Kamal, I have a question for you. We are now trying to be part of the Quad and the Indo-Pacific. Why is it not possible, or is it already being thought of, that the disaster for the Indo-Pacific will rest in India?
Oh, absolutely. So in a few days, you will likely hear an announcement from our Prime Minister and the UK Prime Minister and the Australian Prime Minister, a facility we are launching to take care of the needs of the small island developing states, all 58 of them. So the initiative is called Infrastructure for Resilient Island States. And 3 weeks ago, the whole concept got support from the Quad as well. So that's very much in our strategic outlook.
Brilliant. Now, my next question is to any one of you. What can think tanks do to help you in propagation of what you're doing? The common man doesn't know enough.
I would ask Dr. Krishna to follow up, but let me initiate it. As you're aware, so think tank culture in India is proliferating. There is no doubt about it. And more than the formalized think tanks, which are essentially English-speaking think tanks, I think there's a tremendous amount of scope which is developing for Hindi-speaking think tanks all over the country. Lots of small institutions, small-level private universities which have emerged and which are looking at national security, and in that also disaster management as a subject. Now, first of all, I think there is a need for a generation of much more literature on this. There isn't enough literature at the moment. Huge case studies, we've had tremendous disasters in the country, huge case studies which have been written but not been disseminated enough. You have the NIDM, which is doing some very, very good work on this. You'll find lots and lots of seminars taking place at the NIDM almost every other day. But some of the quality is still missing. What we need to do is to harness quality. It's a part of the Prime Minister's 10-point program to extend the whole issue of disaster management to universities, think tanks, and any other learning institutions of this kind. I think we need to do a lot of work on this as a part of the IEC effort. Over to Dr. Krishna.
So I would like to just mention with one example. Africa is one region where we are jostling for some influence along with other powers. It's a continent which is exposed to frequent droughts and food shortages. And here, if we are able to bring our expertise, our supplies, our humanitarian assistance in a more rounded manner, where disaster management and food supplies and some social protection and few other things that we are good at, if we bring them together, I think we would be far more effective, far more successful in establishing ourselves in the region. So what is very important for the think tank and for our diplomatic establishment is to consider disaster management as an expression of soft power. First, and then disaster management not in a narrow sense where we are just sending some search and rescue personnel. Disaster management in a wider sense, which addresses is a range of governance failures in African countries. So if we are bringing together different elements, and we are very good at many of these things. Only thing is that all of these areas are not coming together. So if we bring them together, I think we have a very good shot at being more influential. And I think this is what the think tanks need to project: our capacities, our dedication to some of the humanitarian values, and our ethos. And I think we would be much better off, in terms of the international and global influence. Thank you.
So Dr. Watts, a think tank like ours, how can it help you to look at your Africa approach?
So first thing is that, one is that disaster management needs to be internationalized much more than what it is right now. That's one thing. Second, that disaster management should not just be practiced by itself. It should also be brought together along with other strands of support. And third, that there should be a dedicated pool of people who are pursuing this, who are supporting this, and who are presenting this to other countries.
Thank you. My next question is to anyone who wishes to answer that. When the pandemic broke out, we suddenly realized that we were deficient of a large number of items which could have been thought of or built about or made available by corporate India. What is it missing that the animal instincts of corporate India don't find favor in relation to how disasters can be redeemed? Is there something that you don't do? Is there something that they don't do? Or is there not enough money in it?
I think basically, I mean, this also, I mean, response to this question also will respond to your earlier question, what is it that think tanks can do? In the specific context of pandemic, I can just say that a lot of the things that and the scale at which we were dealing with things were unprecedented. We haven't seen that kind of impact in living memory. So we can say that, we were not prepared to deal with it. But the related issue and where, think tanks can play a role is to begin to make this point that disaster risk management is not just the business of National Disaster Management Authority or State Disaster Management Authority. The very survival of all the businesses, all spheres of national life depends on how we manage disaster risks. So, any role that think tanks can play in making disaster risk management everyone's business and not just the business of disaster management authorities. And one part of that, it again speaks to both your questions, is think tanks to sort of take a slightly removed look, step back and look at emerging risks. Dr. Krishna Vatsa's presentation talked about that. Not only the risks which are already felt on a season-to-season, year-to-year basis. Think tanks should be producing every few years a future sight report. What is it that could happen? Think of the unthinkable, but reasonable worst case scenarios that could happen. What we've seen in pandemic is pandemic, but also pandemic connecting with other disasters. And the disasters of future and what we're seeing in the Himalayas is cascading disasters. A lot of these things are very difficult to model, but if experts and thinkers sit down, take a hard look at these things, take a step back, there are these scenarios that can be generated, which may not currently be on our radar screen, but they need to be.
If I may add, sir, excellent explanation given by Kishore sir. If I may add, this think tanks in India today tend to imagine that they are only there for what they imagine is strategic affairs. Science and technology somehow seems to be missing from the agenda.
You're talking about.
There are very few scientists you will find, very few members of the scientific community that you will find as part of these think tanks, the generic think tanks that we have. For example, I'm not sure whether your think tank has got any scientists who are present in it.
The head of the organization is a scientist.
But that's excellent, sir. There's no doubt, excellent.
So the point I'm making to you.
By and large, sir, it's something which is missing, and you will find the agenda of most think tanks. It is on geopolitics, it is on geostrategic affairs, it is on military issues. Disaster management, which is emerging now in such a rapid way, it will probably need a much greater scientific thinking than anything else.
You're right. I mean, I can't speak for other think tanks, but I would say that TIC in all its manifestations and in its structure is certainly got a scientific technological base. And that is why we're talking to you today, because we understand the importance of that. And I agree with you. This is something that we should look at more seriously. But I have a linked question with that. And my question goes to any one of you. CSR is a corporate activity. Why is disaster mitigation not authorized as a CSR activity? Why not?
I mean, traditionally, the original CSR rules did not have explicit mention.
I agree,
of
but
that,
I'm saying
but there is nothing actually. The existing rules can be interpreted in ways that it can be done, and this is something, an area of work we've been looking at with Ministry of Corporate Affairs to address. It really needs to be there. Although many companies are putting in money under, so social, I mean, all disaster response can be called social. But what I'm saying is that it is not just enough to have disaster response as part of CSR activities, but also prevention and mitigation.
Yeah, so, it's something we should look at. The other question that is linked with this is it possible for the NDMA to put out position papers of where they want the feedback. Think tanks will get into it. We need to get from you on a yearly, quarterly basis that we're looking at answers to these questions. The point that Kamal made a little earlier. What's the future? Once you become proactive, you will find that the PIC will be reactive. But if you don't become proactive, you will be reactive anyway. That's the point that we need to look at seriously, whether it's Africa, whether it is CSR, whether it is mitigation, whether it is the servicemen getting involved in it, whether trained manpower is available, what is available in the educational syllabus so that people understand the meaning of disaster is national security, and therefore it's important. There are two other questions. I will read out the one because they've come to me, and please answer whoever finds it convenient. Is India planning for centralized resiliency in all the sectors, or would it be prudent to have local gram panchayat, local communities, resiliency in keeping with our ethos of relationship and society-based economics?
I think, I mean, all of us can speak to this, but the movement that is currently happening in the country is really making resilience closer to the ground, as local as possible. And Mr. Rajendra Singh will just talk about the work that he's leading on Apdamit, which is really taking it to the local level. However, having said that, you know, the choice between central or local resilience is a false one. We need both. Having local resilience without central resilience is not enough, because you know, local level is affected by, you know, all local level in a sense is downstream from somewhere else. So if someone doesn't have a strategic national, subnational, state level picture, then local resilience has no meaning. And at the same time, if you only have a national picture, but you're not putting your resources at the local level, that's not enough. So we are working on both. If you look at the Prime Minister's 10-point agenda, there is an explicit point on making resilience local. You know, there's a lot of emphasis on that, while also looking at national level processes. So we need both, and that's the emphasis of NDMA's work. Sir.
Yeah, Rajendra.
Sir, as far as this religious goes, sir, national level, we have already launched that Apda Mitra scheme. As far as the state goes, like earlier you said, I'd like to ask you which state is following, which state is having the best model for disaster, for cyclone. But I will say that Odisha and every state, they have prepared their own teams. Like Odisha, if you talk about, they got a 14,000 strong team of volunteers. And during the time of any cyclone, these volunteers, when Dr. Mohapatra give a warning 4 days in advance, 3 days in advance, this is the job of local volunteers. Local volunteers, they get activated through their mobile or through their system, and they take out all the people out from their villages and take them to the safer place. So this is the local level they are doing. As far as the national level is concerned, we are preparing 1 lakh volunteers in 350 districts, and these volunteers in, like sir, I will give you the example of South Africa. South Africa, they got 600 community volunteers, emergency volunteers they got. Each volunteers visit 44 houses in a month. He interacts 44 families in a month. In a month, all 600 volunteers, they visit around 26,000 families, and in a year, they visit around 3,16,000 families in a year. If you talk about India, if this 1 crore volunteers, 1 lakh volunteers, which we are making it by 2022, end of 2022, we are going to complete 1 lakh volunteers. Now, if these volunteers take on 15 days interaction with the village level, if the Gram Panchayat level, if the locality, and meet and guide people, instruct people, educate people on various disasters, various hazards in that area, I think we'll be able to meet, these people will be able to interact with 1 crore 80 lakhs families in a year. And within a 2 years' time, in 350 districts, which I am talking about, will be able to complete around 4 crore families. So this is a big thing we are doing.
No, Rajendra, I
If I
agree
may
with you.
add, so if I
No,
may
I agree
just
with
add
that.
only 2 lines, if I may add just 2 lines to this excellent explanation just given, we are on the job business of trying to spread the net to see who else can contribute. For example, the Director General of NCC of the Indian Army now has been tasked also to look at this as an additional responsibility. And they are working on this at the moment, and this is going to be incorporated very closely with the Abda Mitra schemes.
That's what I said, sir. That, sir, I'll just take 1 minute. This Abda Mitra is going to work like a bridge between the community and the state agency. If they do this, then we will reduce our work. Our work will be reduced.
No, Rajendra, there's no argument with that. You can get any number of volunteers that you want, and those who are volunteer must never be prevented from volunteering. But you have a system where ex-servicemen are required to give 4 years service after retirement. Why are you looking for it? Why are you looking for volunteers in the district? They are available. Let them create the volunteers for you.
Sir, as far as that criteria which we have promulgated to all the state, to all the districts, it speaks about preference to be given to ex-army personnel.
No, I'm not talking about preference. I'm not talking about preference. I'm talking about obligation. He has a 4-year obligation. You're talking about giving preference. I'm not talking about preference. In the state in which he resides, and Atta will be able to explain that to you, please look at this seriously. I think this is a 70,000 people retire every year. All over the country. They go everywhere and they're available in every district. Please find a way to use them. And they will then help you to build up the workforce that you're talking about.
We have upper age, we have kept it. The lower age and upper age. We said
No,
40 years.
I'm talking about volunteer. I'm talking about volunteer at the district level. One other question. What about the NERMP? What is the status of NERMP? ND, MCR, that is done well. What about NERMP? Where are we on earthquakes?
Are you talking about the National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Program?
No. Earthquake.
Earthquake. Okay. So we are right now in the midst of preparing the program, and I got delayed just because of that. We attended a meeting with the Government of India. So what we are doing is that we are consulting the states, we are consulting all the eminent technical institutions, all the IITs, and all the national institutions which specialize in earthquake resistance. And we are developing this program which will be implemented across the Himalayan states and across all the other states which lie in seismic zone 4 and 5. So it's an ambitious program, and it will be implemented over 7 years. That's right now the plan. Within 3-4 months, we should be able to finalize the plan and start the implementation.
Is there something in which we can help?
Oh, certainly. This is something where we definitely need a lot of help, and we would be.
We'll be very happy to. We'll be happy to have a query to which we can respond.
Sure. We will get back to you, and we will invite you for consultations. We are going through the round of consultations.
And I promise you, when we arrive, we will not create an earthquake. And my next question relates to Atta. You were talking about fires. Would you not restrict yourself to forest fires? Why do you want to get involved in other fires? Other fires, there is a forest. There is a fire.
I'll ask my colleagues to correct me if I'm wrong. The broad charter here, sir, is that urban fires are not under the purview of disaster. Of the disaster as the way we describe it.
No, I'm saying there is a forest service.
It is under the fire services. Right. But forest fires are nobody's baby at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. Forest fire is a great idea.
Forest fires are nobody's baby, and that is why we are looking at this afresh completely to see whose responsibility it should actually be, what equipment we should be actually providing for it, which are the areas which we are concerned about.
And my last question, second last question relates to the end, all of you. Is it possible for you, I'm sure it is, it's a bad question, framing it the bad way. Why is it possible for you to come out with a white paper every 3 years or 2 years or 3 years on technologies that are happening in the world, we are importing, and the industrial India should know why is this being imported? Why can't we make it? How do you light the fire in their stomach?
It's a great idea, and I think we should definitely address the emerging technologies and
that's it.
lessons that they present. I think this is something that we need to work as part of presenting new frontiers in disaster management. So thanks very much for your suggestion, and we will definitely look at it very carefully.
We would help in whichever way we can.
Yes, thank you.
And the last thing is,
Sir, on this last point of yours, these can be joint ventures between think tanks and the NDMA. If we make a proposal on this and give out a broad charter, do you think a think tank like yours can work with us to create such papers?
No, Atta, we have no problem about being joint, but I wanted to go back to Kamal. Kamal has a great vision about what happens in the world. New technologies come about, at least a small paper or an update, the quarterly thing available. This is now available. Why can't we get it? Now, I can produce 500 guys from the army to go and handle an earthquake, but the guys don't know how to sense beyond 2 meters. I can't give them a sensor. Why does a sensor have to come from being flown from Delhi? Why can't it be equipped with it? Why can't the district be equipped with it? Why can't SEZs be set up for disaster management techniques and equipment? I mean, if you do that, surely, as all of you have said, and we have repeated it, and we're only saying it because it's important for us to understand, that disaster is a function of national security. There can be no national security if disaster is not well managed. As Kamal said himself, your esteem in the world depends on how you manage a disaster, not how you fight a war. How you fight a war, either you win or you lose. But the way you manage a disaster gives you esteem of a soft power, which is out of proportion of the investment that you make in it. And then the neighbors come around and say, here is a billion-strong people, such a large population. If you want anything, let's go to them. Let's train with them. Let's buy equipment from them. Let's get industries get set, subsidies get set. We are not multiplying that in the way we should. And the pandemic should have told us. I mean, look at drugs industry. APIs are coming from China, and we're saying we're making pharmaceutical. Well, we should be. Nobody told them, listen, this is important. Tomorrow, if there's a pandemic, you won't get it from another country. So that criticality, if you put out a team with the industry, or Kamal can do a great job in that, done United Nations for as long as I think I can remember, at least the biodata says 22 years, and that's a long time, Kamal, to be anywhere and do some great work like that. So if you put all this together, I think it is something that will help us, and look us as think tanks are looking at you, not with the idea of finding fault. We are not a fault finding machine. Where can we help? We don't want to intrude. Where can we help? If your queries come to us, I'm sure if we can't answer it, we'll tell you upfront we can't answer it. Then you'll be able to get somebody else. With this, I think we've not only overshot the time, but I'm not going to close this before asking our president, Dr. Mashelkar, because you refer to a scientist and you're now going to hear the scientist. Dr. Mashelkar.
Well, thank you very much. I think, first of all, just want to say how grateful we are to NDMA, all of you, for enlightening us and telling us lots of things that honestly we did not know. Because the impression we gathered yesterday when we're hearing views about NDMA and the need for disaster management versus disaster risk reduction. It is not disaster management, but also disaster risk reduction. They are somewhat different. I think today's session has been very enlightening in terms of the great work that is being done. Just 2 points, since you mentioned about science and technology. You know, what happens is that sometimes we take oxygen in the air as granted because we're breathing all the time and we don't even know that there is oxygen in the air. I think science and technology is like that. For example, in this very panel, we had Dr. Mohapatra, the Director General of Meteorology, talking about what we have been able to accomplish. That is nothing but science and technology. I was a member of Science Advisory Committee to the Prime Minister in Rajiv Gandhi's time, when we had this particular crisis about not getting Cray and then all these Param supercomputers coming up and our delivering on that, including Param 10,000. Of course, then the world changed. Now we have supercomputers in our hand. But I have seen the way we struggled at that time when things were denied to us. In fact, I call it denial-driven innovation. Scientific community rose and did what it did at the time. And now the world is sort of different. So many times, I wish the distinguished NDMA members were there in the earlier session on role of science and technology and what we have been able to do. In fact, I would say 2020 was known as a year of pandemic. I would call it as a year of science, to be honest. The way the vaccines were developed. And today we also heard about mRNA vaccines, our own capacity, how the costs were brought down and so on and so forth, etc. We heard the presentation on cyclone. There are a few things that are taken for granted. When I was the DG of CSR, I remember the Indian Red Cross Society as well as the German Red Cross. They had come to us, and that is where those multi-purpose cyclone shelters, which were aerodynamically shaped, were designed, and they have been used sort of all across. Lakhs of lives have been saved. In fact, in 2013, I remember 75 multi-purpose cyclone shelters were put in Odisha. So when we hear about lakhs of lives that are being saved, what is forgotten as to the structural engineering research center which actually designed them and put them in Odisha. So we have been all over, by the way. Science and technology has been all over, whether you look at weather prediction, whether you look at health, etc. I think there is a huge communication gap. Let me be very, very frank in terms of our sort of understanding each other and the role that each other plays, including NDMA. Very frankly, I, sitting here as a scientist and technologist, was not aware of what NDMA is doing. So I think there is that is required. And on behalf of PIC, Pune International Center, I can certainly say that think tank will have a big role to play. You know, looking at not only the trend analysis, the forecasting, but the kind of thing that we can bring on the table are sort of enormous. I'll request Dr. Vijay Kelkar, our Vice President, to say a few words, because this is a subject that is also close to his heart. But before closing, utterly grateful to you for time that you gave and the enlightenment that you gave on the National Disaster Management Authority. Thank you. Vijay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
So first, I want to thank General Mehta and his entire colleagues who spoke today. Really, it was, as Dr. Marshall says, I was also not aware of the width and the depth of the work being done by NDMA, and I want to congratulate them. And I think there is a tendency, and I think I would urge, maybe already Dr. Vatsa also doing it, but I would urge to educate the powers that be about how cost-effective the programs of NDMA are. You know, take the Odisha example. I think Odisha is historically has not flourished in the post-colonial period because the disaster were not handled properly. And otherwise, that state would not have been so poor. And now we'll see that after what we are doing as an independent country, with the way we look after disasters in Odisha, that economy is picking up, and I can assure you, it was the most dynamic state of India in the coming years, because wherever it got growth, it got arrested because of disaster. Now that interruption is stopping, growth is interruption. So I think the enormous contribution the organization like NDMA is doing by analysis. I think, as Dr. Marshall has said, and General Mehta assured you that if we can do anything for NDMA, we'll be happy to do whatever little bit we can, because work you are doing is of great importance for maintaining resilience of this country. And only we can keep it. Nobody else outside the world will help us. It's really completely, here we have to Atmanirbhar, I'm afraid. There's nobody else can give us resiliency. And it's a very low cost but high return activity what you're doing. And that point has to be made to powers that be. That how, as General Mehta said, I saw it in, if you look at Odisha's economic history, you'll find this. And now you'll see, like I'm willing to bet you that how Odisha is going to boom in the coming decades because of the way we handle, independent India is handling the issue of, and this is true of other states also, wherever sub-regions, I'm talking within state now, there are a lot of sub-regions get affected like this. So if states are also sensitized, we'll find much more sort of untapped source of energy and growth will be unleashed in India. So it's very important work you are doing, and I want to congratulate you for what you have been doing, and we'll be happy to whatever little bit we can from our center. Thank you. Thank you, General.
Thank you, Vijay. Pat, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It all remains for me now to convey our deep appreciation and thanks to General Mehta, sir, yourself, also to Shri Kamal Kishore, General Hasnain, Dr. Vatsa, and Shri Rajendra Singh, apart from Dr. Mohapatra, who also added a very significant dimension to the deliberations today. We are much wiser at the end of this session, and has already been articulated by our President and Vice President. We would love to follow this up and, in fact, be interactive with the NDMA on these various issues which concern national security, because it's part of our area of interest, and so is science and technology. So thank you very much. It's been extremely educative and extremely useful. Let us keep this contact alive for the future as well. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.